大家好，我叫 Jeff， 你们可以叫我杰夫。我从2019年开始住在中国，上个月我搬回了南非。今天我想跟大家分享中国和南非的一些不同。如果我的中文不太好，请多多包涵。Hello everybody, my name is Jeff. But in China, everybody called me 姐夫, which means brother-in-law. I moved to China in 2019, and last month I returned to South Africa. Today I want to share some things that surprised me the most about living in both countries. Let's start with language. Most people think in China everybody simply speaks Chinese, but that's only partly true. The official language is 普通话, which means the standard dialect, or Mandarin. But there are thousands of regional dialects. I lived in Yangzhou, where many people spoke Yangzhouhua, and honestly, it sounded nothing like Mandarin. South Africa has 11 official languages. I speak English and Afrikaans, but I don't speak the language that probably 90% of the people in my own city speak. I actually think that's quite sad, and it's something that I'll definitely be working on. Before you even learn the Chinese characters, you first learn pinyin, which writes Chinese sounds using our alphabet. Then comes thousands of characters, which at first just look like little pictures. And then there are the tones. Chinese has 4 tones, and changing your tone completely changes the meaning of a word. Think about it in English. Really and really sounds completely different. In English, your tone changes the emotion. In Chinese, it changes the actual word. That completely blew my mind. For example, there are 2 cities in China called Taizhou. My students helped me to distinguish between Jiangsu Taizhou, Taizhou with a falling tone, and Zhejiang Taizhou, the high-level tone, which I'm not going to attempt because I'll probably butcher it. Let's talk about culture. South Africa is generally a much more religious society, while China is mostly secular. But China has its own traditions and beliefs. You'll often see Cai Shengye, the god of wealth, especially during Chinese New Year, or the number 8, which is considered incredibly lucky because it sounds similar to the word for prosperity. So, if you ever want to connect to the Wi-Fi in China, chances are very good that the password will be ba ga ba, or 8 8s, so you won't have any difficulty connecting to the internet in China. Another thing that surprised me was how many families joked that the wife manages the household finances. Obviously, every family is different, but it seemed to be very common. Chinese New Year is by far the biggest celebration of the year. Families travel across the country, homes are decorated in red, fireworks go on for days, and people send hongbaos or red packets containing money through WeChat or in cash. Even though Christmas isn't a major holiday, you'll still see Christmas trees in shopping centers and hear Christmas music playing almost everywhere during December. Transport was probably the biggest difference. China is built around movement. High-speed trains, electric cars, e-bikes, and buses, and Didi, their own form of Uber. I paid 3,000 RMB for my e-bike. That's about 7,500 Rand. And I worked out that over the years, I had ridden roughly the distance from Cape Town to Cairo and back twice. Each trip would only cost me about 1 RMB, or about 2 Rand 40, compared to about 40 RMB if I took a taxi from home to work. People also walk a lot more in China, and it's generally safe to do so. I averaged around 20,000 steps every day in China. But back in South Africa, I'm closer to about 8,000. China's high-speed rail is incredible. A trip from Shanghai to Beijing covers more than 1,200 kilometers and takes less than 5 hours. It costs about 1,500 Rands, and the train travels at speeds of up to 350 kilometers an hour. They are clean, comfortable, incredibly efficient, and honestly one of the things I miss the most. Petrol costs around 20 Rand a litre in China, compared to about 25 Rand per litre here in South Africa. Paying for things is another huge difference. China is almost completely cashless. Everyone uses WeChat or Alipay. One colleague once told me that not even her grandmother carries cash. The Chinese currency is called renminbi, which literally means the people's currency. And at the moment, 1 RMB is worth about 2 Rand 45. Another thing that really impressed me was online shopping. Taobao is almost like a combination between Takealot, Amazon, and Facebook Marketplace, all in one app. I remember walking into a clothing shop, seeing a shirt and taking a photo of it. Open it up on Taobao and finding exactly the same shirt for a fraction of the price. Food delivery was just as impressive. The biggest app is called Meituan, with its yellow little kangaroo logo. Whenever I didn't feel like cooking, I'd order on the app, and my food would often arrive in minutes. Work was another interesting difference. I worked as a teacher from around 8 a.m. until 5:30 p.m. Teachers in China, foreign teachers that is, can often earn up to 50,000 Rand a month, and in many cases considerably more, depending on the type of school and city. Many schools provide accommodation and meals. Here's something interesting. High school students start at around 7 a.m. and in many cases don't finish until 10 p.m., Monday through Friday. There's a huge focus on academics, while school sport is generally not as important as it is in South Africa. One thing I definitely wasn't expecting was how much marketing I would have to do for my private school. I'd love to hear from teachers in South Africa. What does a teacher earn here? What are your normal working hours? And what are other additional responsibilities expected outside of the classroom? Now let's talk about my favorite topic, food. Living in China was a real adventure. I tried stinky tofu, pigeon soup, century egg, chicken embryo, and spicy frog hot pot. Some things were amazing, but other things, once was enough. I absolutely fell in love with the noodles, the dumplings, youtiao, which reminded me a bit of vetkoek, and Xinjiang barbecue, the closest thing to braaivleis. What I missed the most about South Africa was a proper braai, good quality meat, millipap, and just sitting around the fire with friends. Food prices were interesting too. A local noodle meal in China could cost around 50 Rand, while a steak at a high-end restaurant could easily cost 800 Rand or more. So that's just a glimpse of my thoughts about China and South Africa. I'd like to hear from you. What does food cost where you live? What about public transport, petrol, and rent? And if you got any specific questions about living in China, ask away. Leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer every one. 我很期待你们的留言. I'm really looking forward to reading your comments.